Hey, this is DJ Straight. Happy Monday. Welcome to Praise from the Closet, Gospel Music Lovers Buffet. And I am excited. We are doing our Black History Month presentation. And I didn't want to go to the books and say, let's go look at Harriet Tubman. I wanted to go to people that I actually knew. So listen, if you are on Facebook, hit share. If you are on YouTube, hit subscribe because we have a lot of exciting shows coming up on our Black History Month celebration. And I will not hesitate to hurry up and get to my guest for today because when the idea came, he was the first person that came to my mindset because I have had the privilege of watching him close up and at a distance for years. And he has always been consistent and always been the same. And you all know here at WGMLB, Praise from the Closet, we're only going to give you the best. We are only going to give you people that have positive influences, people that have integrity, and people that we know that just will have something good to say that will make an impact on your life or your family's life or just in the community. And while I'm talking, I want to make sure that I share this because this interview, like I said, this is my first one for our Black History Month celebration. Again, go ahead and hit subscribe. So it gives me an honor and a privilege today. Normally I don't use papers when I introduce people, but today this gentleman has so much. Earlier today, I heard them talking about the Queen of England, and the Queen, and she has 70 years being in that royal capacity. Well, I want Queen Elizabeth to know you have nothing on our guest. I will probably never meet Queen Elizabeth, and Charlie won't even call me and say, congratulations, I want you to be one of the angels. But Dr. Ulysses Moye, he is definitely tangible. He has over 50 years of experience in teaching, the curriculum development program supervision. He then has over 56 years with the Moye Ensemble. He has 25 years of being an adjunct professor at George Washington University. He has been an assistant principal in Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C. He has been in Fairfax County schools. And this is what I liked, his professional affiliations: the Music Educators National Conference, the Virginia Association of Secondary School Principals, and one without saying is the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses, where he has served as the 5th and 3rd Vice President. He's a Dean of the AHTI and the Board of Directors. So before I keep running my mouth, that was the piece of paper. I'm going to bring Dr. Moye in because I wanted to say that he is a man that has had a huge impact on my life, not just in music, but even in his Christianity, because I've watched him. I've watched him as a father, as a grandfather, as a leader. I've watched him when he's in his stance, when he's conducting. But Dr. Moye, I just want to say thank you, and I am introducing you. I keep saying congregation, I'm not in church, but audience, Dr. Ulysses Moye the second, Ulysses G. Moye the second. Welcome to Praise in the Closet with DJ Straight. How are you?
I'm doing well, Lynn. It's my pleasure. My pleasure to be here, and I'm very grateful and very humbled that you would think about me and think of me in that capacity to begin your Black History events for your DJ Straight. But I am very happy. We go way back, and we've shared many musical experiences together. So I'm honored to be your guest today.
Thank you. So, Dr. Moye, I wanted to first start out asking you, your name is Dr. Ulysses Moye the second. What does that mean to you?
Well, when I think about that name, I guess I have to go back to my childhood, and I did some research. We know Ulysses, the Odyssey, the Great, and all that, but I was named for my grandfather. That's why I'm the second.
Mhm.
And I've always felt that I had to kind of live up to that name since I was named with him, because he was an educator and he was a Baptist minister and was a leader in the state of North Carolina and traveled throughout the United States. But he was a leader in terms of the Baptist Missionary Baptist Church. And of course, they didn't call it convention, they call it associations, where he interacted with many, many other ministers. So I grew up in that environment and always kind of felt the need to be very, I wouldn't say making sure that I was doing the very same things, but cognizant of the fact that the life that had been poured into me, that I wanted to make the best of it.
Yes, and thank you, because that segues right into my next question. You have such a passion for education. Is that how you got started in doing that route of education? Because there's so much that you've done.
Well, I guess I was surrounded by educators. I'm blessed, and I don't just say it very lightly. I came from a family of educators. In fact, their grandfather, he was a principal. He and my grandmother ran the one-room schoolhouse, so I heard much about those days. And then I had aunts, my father, uncle, my other paternal grandmother. She was also an educator. So I was surrounded by education. And during that time, you were encouraged to go to college, to graduate, because
Yes,
that was an avenue for you to be very successful, teaching career. And I had looked at many of them being teachers, but I've always felt, in terms of being an educator, once I really got involved in it, that you never learn it all. So
yes,
you are a continuous learner if you allow yourself to. Uh, I think of the many years, that I've been in Washington, D.C. when I came to start at Howard in 1960. So that's, like 61 years ago. I came for the purpose of becoming a music teacher, band teacher. So that's where I started, but I always felt that there were other opportunities, but never really looked at it until someone saw in me, I guess, administrative qualities. So then I was moved into that area. But surely, I was in DC for 9 years, 2 of those years in administration, vice principal. And I
mhm,
worked at Kramer Junior High School. And then the opportunity came to go to Fairfax. And of course, for me, going to Fairfax in that day was a real step. Few minority administrators and vice principals. So,
exactly.
the and I won't say the competition, but the need for me to really uh, take advantage of every opportunity. And during that time, the administrators and the principals and vice principals, all of us were given the opportunity to take at least 6 credits a year. So I was always the one to raise my hand to go. And people say, "How did you attend so many colleges and universities?" Well, Fairfax being Fairfax, they brought the gurus to us. So absolutely,
Wow.
at the
Wow.
at the end of 2 weeks, many times you had your graduate credit. And I'm blessed to say I have credit from places that I've never put my foot in that actual campus, but the professors came to us in Fairfax in many instances. So I took advantage of it, and it's paying off now, because usually when you're in those jobs until you retire, you don't get a chance to really do very much in some of those, because the public relations is very, very high and very important in Fairfax County. So there's so many things that take you away from the actual usage of all the knowledge that you gain. But being able to retire in 2000 from Fairfax, and then come to Prince George's County in staff
Yes.
development. And when I came to Prince George's County, my only thing was that I'm not going to work full time. So I was placed in a regular part-time position in staff development to train teachers. Now, that was a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to pour back all of the knowledge that had been poured into me down those 25 years that I spent in Fairfax County. And it was a wonderful feeling to give back to beginning teachers, because I can remember my first day walking in October 1970 Well, they had had a substitute for a whole month. And I walk into the music room with 35, 40 kids, some
Uh-huh.
sitting state aiders, no books, not a lot of equipment. And here I am, the new teacher. And I remember those days, what a struggle it was. So I said, if I ever became elevated, I would never forget that when I moved into administration, the fact that I had to have someone to really help me and to walk me through and mentor me. So mine was mentoring and being an instructional coach. And of
Yes.
course, the opportunity came for me to go to George Washington in 2002. So I took advantage of that. And
And
I've
you're
been there.
still there.
I'm still there. I'm still there. In fact, on Wednesday, I go for the first observation for my student teacher at Wilson Senior High in DC. So that's
Mhm.
a 20-year, but that's not, every day. That's, a semester when they're planning to graduate and get their, master's in education. So it's been a wonderful journey, but I just tend to feel that every opportunity I get, in fact, I have some courses now that I take on my own where you don't have to be on the computer every week, but at my own pace as long as I finish it within those 180 days. So
Okay.
I'm,
Okay.
I'm still a student, still a student.
Ever learning. So I noticed that you graduated from Howard. Now, before prior coming to Howard, what type of music background did you have prior to coming to Howard, to attending Howard University?
Well, the musical background came from my family. My mother was a musician. My grandmother was a musician. My father was a musician. And my other
Wow.
uncle was a musician. They played. So I grew up with music and began my music lessons with my grandmother and mother at age 4. And then I went to a person who became a professor at Virginia State University Music Department, Dr. Webb. She became my piano teacher in my home city of Kinston, North Carolina, and then I went to Miss Battle, and there I started my formal training in the John Thompson studies at that time.
Oh, remember those?
But I learned to read, and then it became a lot. My mother remarried and was moving to um, Chicago. So I had played for the Sunday school and all, and we were all in my grandfather's church. So it became my task to take over the choir. So I played for the senior choir of all at age 13. Here I am starting with the senior choir. And during that time, they were able to read what you call shape notes. So they could try to, correct it. But I guess this is where my administrative skills began to kick in very early. I realized that I was responsible, I was in charge, and I could not take the suggestions and the directions of those that I was supposed to be over in helping them to improve. So I was, could take charge very gently and move that choir. I can remember playing "Lift Up Your Heads, O Ye Gates," those anthems. They were singing them. They could read those shape notes back in the 50s. So it made me know that you just had to be prepared. And my mother was the one who really said, now you have to learn the other part of it. So she sat me down, took the music away, and I play what I'm playing. And she would get on the Hammond organ, and I'd be on the piano. We played together, and she taught me how to play gospel and how to use the ears. So all of it went together. So when I came to Howard, I had the formal training, but
Okay.
that was a need for brushing up on the technique in order to meet the standards for freshman entry, and I did that within a semester. So I was on target at the end of the first semester because I had not had a lot of theory, and that was a requirement. Howard at that time was more like a conservatory, so
Okay.
you really had to know what you were doing. Very little liberal arts was included in our training during that time because it was a school of music. It was not a
Mhm.
department, it was a school of music. So I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity to come to Howard during that era.
Wow. When you talk about music, you smile. When you talk about the administration, I see the smile on your face. So listen, I want to all let you know I am interviewing Dr. Ulysses Moye, and I'm going to actually scroll his contact information for those that are watching if you want to reach out and get in touch with Dr. Moye. But you mentioned that you started playing at 13. Now, I wanted to ask you with that, did you find it a little difficult to kind of tell people that could be your mother and grandmother what to do, or because you had that sweetness, you didn't have a problem with them listening to you when you had to teach them music at the church?
Right. I didn't see it as a problem, because if I had allowed it to, I guess I could have been intimidated, because here I am in my grandfather's church, and here I am, and these persons were members of his congregation. And at some point, I couldn't take all their suggestions. So I just had to be prepared. And when I came in, I was prepared. This is what we're going to do, and I didn't have a problem because they found out, that I could read.
Hmm.
I could play everything that that I needed to play, and I was able to teach. That was one thing I got from my mother. Teach parts. Don't let everybody just sing what they want to sing. Teach the harmony, teach soprano, alto, tenor part, and basses. We had the full choir, senior choir. That's what they were singing, the hymns and the anthems. So, you had to be able to teach the parts, especially if I was doing something new. But I didn't find it difficult because I guess I was not laid back, but I realized that they were adults, and I realized that this was something that I had to do, and I was able to do that from the time I took over the senior choir, and until I graduated from high school and left and came to college. So I was very successful. I didn't have any problems. Nobody was running telling my grandfather I was rude or anything like that, because that would not have been very good for me. But
For you,
but I,
exactly.
but I was able to balance it. I'll say that way. I was able to balance it, and much like the demeanor, my mother was a very easygoing person, but yet could take charge. And I guess that's what I might say, that maybe I was doing in some, very easygoing, but I could be in charge.
Yes. And so I'm going back and forth between administration and music because that's what you do. So when you first got into the administrative part in the various systems, what were some of your challenges?
Well, I went through the district 7 years in the classroom, and then 2 of those years, this is where I guess the principal saw something in me. He gave me some of the students to what we call that they were not always on task. So he gave me a period to work with them, and I work with them in a special way of having them to service the staff, the teachers. They would deliver the supplies, and we do simple math about ordering and things like that. So
Wow.
I guess he saw a lot, in me, and so did the other staff. He relieved me in several classes, and administratively, I had begun even before that to look at my classes uh, as classes that needed to be feeding into what was kind of new then, Duke Ellington School of the Arts, and into McKinley. And I had that opportunity to understand the curriculum and that part of administration for them. And I prepared my students. In fact, I had very few general music classes by the time I left that position and went into administration at the same school, because I had been very creative with the students. So instead of having 25, 30, 40 general music classes all day, I had
Hmm.
one general music class, and then I had special classes where I was teaching theory, music history, which was kind of unheard of then in junior high school. And because of some of the things that I had put in place administratively, they were able to go right into Duke Ellington and right into high school and be at an advanced level. Many of the students left me in the ninth grade and went right to McKinley Tech, where they were in the music program. At that time, Miss Gilks was in charge of it,
Yes, it was.
and into Duke Ellington. So that part of administration. But then the principal was moved, and a new acting principal came in, and he kind of looked at me. He said, "It looks like you know more about the school and the scheduling and how to develop a schedule, build a schedule than many others. So I'm going to make you my assistant principal." And that
Wow.
was the beginning of it, just like that. And then he stayed there for 2 years. And then because he was in an acting position, but lived in Fairfax County, so he was taking a job in Fairfax County in human resources. So he talked to me. He said, "Would you like to go to Fairfax County?" I said, "As a music teacher?" He said, "No, as a vice principal assistant." Well, at that time they had a administrative aide. Then you went to assistant principal one, assistant principal two, associate principal, right on up the ladder, administrator. So he said, "No, in administration." So he made that arrangement for me, and I was very kind of indecisive because I said Fairfax County. I started studying. I said, this is a step, really a step up. But I said, this is an opportunity. I'm going to take advantage of it. So I left the DC school system after 9 years, 7 in the classroom, into an administration, and went to Fairfax, and that started another journey, but one that
Absolutely.
I cherish. I even cherish the days that I spent in DC. Very fulfilling for me, even in the classroom, because anything is what you make it. And
Yes.
it can be bad. It can be, I didn't look at the neighborhood. I didn't look at them, down at them. It was my opportunity to pour something into them and to be able to save everyone that I possibly could. And knowing that you may not reach everyone, but you continue to try. And that's what I did. So many of my rewarding days came from Kramer Junior High School when I was in the classroom. I have students right now, one who has a doctorate. She's back teaching at Duke Ellington, where I sent her from junior high school. I
That
have in
that's
California, who majored in music, that I started playing the melody flute. So I guess the music and all that's tied in there when you look at goals, and I looked at curriculum and just not putting anything together, but putting something so if students would desire to take it further, they were able to. So I have, a number of students who did go on to major in music from my music classes.
well, it's interesting because I am a Kinley Tech and I was in the band and I played trombone, but I was going to ask you the reward of teaching. Did you have former students coming back to say thank you for what you instilled in them? Because you looked at the total person.
Yes, yes. There are two specifically. One is in San Diego, California. I
Hmm.
started out on the little melody flute that we bought out here in Laurel, Maryland. A little simple instrument. The boy is fantastic on any woodwind instrument that you want to give him now, because he started playing on that melody flute. I have many other students. I had an octet, because at that time it was very difficult to have assemblies, because sometimes the behavior was not, what it needed to be. So I was made the auditorium teacher. So a
Wow.
lot of the activities that we had, I began to try to teach them. When you go to concerts, at that time it was Constitution Hall, what should it be? So I worked with the English teachers to look at decorum, to see how attend a concert, have the students to make up their own programs, serve as the ushers. And then it was a learning experience, because they built it, they developed it. But the other person came back maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, and she's the one who's teaching at Duke Ellington. But I was doing the Living Christmas Tree performance, and I was looking for someone to be like an assistant director, to be able to, because I couldn't be in all places when I was conducting, to make sure that behind the stage everything was moving.
Hmm.
But I needed someone who had that kind of experience. And Daphne Dunstan Wharton, and I think she's married again now. Just stepped right in, just came right in, and she lived right around the corner from Kramer, and she's still back in that neighborhood now. But she stepped back in and just was able to pick up, just like we had never, been out of contact with each other. She's the one. She went to East Carolina College, got her music degrees and all. So she's back now, full-time staff, I believe, at Duke Ellington, teaching. Very. She's a great singer, but a wonderful spirit. So there are those. There are some from the singing, the architect. Some of you may know. I think there's another name, but Jimmy Sturdivant, Pastor Sturdivant. He was one of those in that small architect I had, and there were a number of them that came through there, and they were well known because on Sundays we were go to churches, and I'd take them there. We'd visit. I had my little gospel choir. Now that too paid off because I have members in the Moye ensemble now that I taught in junior high school that still sing with me. Still,
It's a small world because
yeah.
when Pastor Sturby came to my birth church, I noticed his technique in singing and directing. I had no idea that you had an integral part on his music career because his boys used to watch me play the drums. But it's so interesting because as you were talking, when I first, well, before I even knew who you were, I knew about the Moye Ensemble, and I will always watch your stance. I remember hearing five-part harmony, but I got to know you. I was like, oh, okay. Could you talk about the importance of musicians? I'm gonna come back to that part, but talk about the importance of musicians knowing theory, how to read music, the timing, and things of that nature.
Well, it's very important, and I say that from the standpoint of how my mother pushed me out to start playing, as we say, by ear,
Mm-hmm.
a combination of both. But that there's such a challenge out here now for many, and the pendulum swings both ways. But there are
Mm-hmm.
times that someone is I found in my experiences as a minister of music down because I started, 1961 at Greater New Hope. But even before that, the soloists would come in. I'm singing this. You're in the main accompanies and put a piece of music in front of you that you've never seen before. Now, you don't have time to say play the tape or let me hear it. So it has its advantages, and I say everyone doesn't have to have a college degree in music, but uh, I think it's necessary for those situations that if you're going to be holding a position, there's going to be a certain requirement. And many times I found myself over those 20 some years that I served as minister of music, a guest soloist would come in and here's my sheet of music. So you didn't have time to go downstairs and practice it. No, you fall right in. You learn the techniques of being able to know you might not play every note, but you're not going to miss very much in terms of supporting that soloist. Um, it serves too when you're teaching because many choirs you don't hear the bass part, which is the support, of the chord and basically of the choir. If you have that, and people used to ask me, why does the ensemble sound different? I had first sopranos and I had basses and baritones, and
Mm-hmm.
that made a difference in the harmony. And I learned that from Professor Mark Fax at Howard in orchestration, how to
Oh,
score and how to write music for the voices, and that was one thing, the doubling, which was really necessary. He stressed that, and 2 years of orchestration with him prepared me for chorus and band. I taught band 1 year at Kramer, but then chorus was really my preference, so I didn't do very much with the band. We just didn't have a band teacher that year, so I took some instrumental music students, but musicians need to be broad in terms of their skill. And I think it's incumbent, things change. We go through different stages, but I don't think we'll ever miss the opportunity for musicians to be able to read.
well, I often think about you when I was at various churches and these guys could play the organ just like top notch. But the pastor would say, play, lift them up, or lean on the everlasting arms, and the chorus was so fancy. I've seen pastors say, well, what is that? And in my mind, it's like, but Dr. Moye said, if you knew how to read, or if you just learned the basics, you could do that. And that's why I've always looked at you as if you sanction it, then I know it's great. But all of your skills, talk about now how you transform, you've taken that administrative skill and your music into the church, because you've been minister of music, you've been over music programs. When I was reading your bio, I was like, wow, he's been in so many places, but every place you go, you're not one of those drive-bys. You've been in there, you've spent some time cultivating music ministries down in Virginia and DC, certainly home. Can you talk about that?
Well, yes, at Greater New Hope, I had the opportunity to have other persons on the staff. Dr. Joan Hilsman, you know her, she
Mhm.
was on the late Von Roan, um, Ed Grayson, late Ed Grayson. Uh, God blessed all of them to have music degrees. So, in working with our
Okay.
choirs there, even though I was minister of music, it was a team. That's why I learned the teaming. You know, you don't know it all. Don't try to do it all because you're going to burn out. But if you get persons, we had 9 choirs there. And then at some point we would join those 9 choirs. Alfonso Jones, who had been to Duke Ellington, all of those were musicians there with me in that era. And I had to learn how to be their colleague, but also be their, you know, their supervisor. So
Yeah.
that's where the administrative skills came in. But it was a shared responsibility, you know, collaborate, talk about it because everybody brings to the table different experiences. You know, here Dr. Joan Hillsman, long before me, you know. So I
Yes.
had to respect that. But I think because everybody came to the table and they realized where their lane was. I think a lot of times now what happens,
Mm.
people kind of all over the place, you know,
Yes.
become an expert at something. You know, I can remember as administrator, I said, now after all this training, what is it that I want to be able to add and to say that I am a pretty good guru without, you know, trying to pat myself on. And that was the cooperative learning repertoire for teaching. You know, you hear a lot about differentiation and all those strategies that will help students to learn and open up the classroom and give teachers a different way of delivering instruction. So I started mastering cooperative learning. So, you know, when I went to Prince George's County from
Mhm.
Virginia, that had helped me get all of that training over those 20 some years, I was really ahead of the department, the head of the department. They were
Wow.
looking at me to come in. You know, we had some 200 or 300 of us who had retired, retirees, and come back from other jurisdictions. I found myself training. And here I am coming in to be trained and to, you know, serve as a mentor. So then I began to look, you know, well, all the training paid off because now you know, that you being considered in quotes the expert because yes, I had taken some, you know, 6 9 hours in it and to make sure that it was something that I would be able to share. While in Fairfax County, I would go into the classroom for a semester. I'd pick a
Okay.
teacher. Let me be your co-teacher to make sure this works. Because a lot of times, you know, we learn things theoretically, but we don't have the practical application of it. So for a number of years before I left Fairfax, I would go back into the classroom with the teacher and I would, you know, co-teach and I would
Yeah.
use those strategies and model those strategies for teachers. And, you know, it all paid off. It made me be able to say, I know that works. Not the book said it, but my actual hands-on experience. So when I came to, like I said, Prince George's County, I was able to share that. And I'm still sharing it right now, even at George Washington University. I was certified to be able to be a national trainer of the Kagan model. So I'm able to, you know, to use that as one of the um, very good repertoire pedagogical pedagogy is what I'm trying to say.
Negotiate. Okay.
Yeah, pedagogy in helping teachers to develop that. So administration for me was something I guess, well, not guess. You're born with gifts, I believe.
Yes.
You're born with yep. And I think we're responsible for making them better and making them more effectively because I found out the same administrative skills that I use. Just take, for example, cooperative learning. When I did gospel music workshops, I could
Hmm.
use the same strategies for making sure that the content, because I'm very high on teaching about the Levitical model from the Bible.
Yes.
So how do people learn that without me standing up there lecturing, you know, for 2 or 3 hours, you know, morning and afternoon and come back another day? Could not do that. So I use those same strategies, that I had learned and poured into other teachers to be able to make the lessons more interesting, more
Mhm.
interactive, because people tend to learn what they take ownership of. And if
Wow.
I'm involved in it, I'm helping to do it, I'm helping to orchestrate it, then I'll buy into it and I get more out of it.
That is a great statement. They learn what they have ownership of. That is great because again, you're taking your the secular skills at work, and then you put them in the church because you're just not just in music. I was reading you did foreign language, you did all types of um different arenas as being an administrator. But I also wanted to ask you, so when you started working, one thing I didn't see in your resume, and I have to go back because you had the Cumba. How did the Cumba come about? The Cumba Music School. I didn't see that in your resume.
The combo music was the acronym that I used, and his family initials, D for
Mhm.
Don for my son, A for Andre, and I put that together when I started writing. I do very little composing and writing. I was writing during the early days of the ensemble, and then I started doing workshops very early. Fort Myers was a place that Virginia, the military institute. I was on staff there interim for about 7 years, and a lot of workshops through the Protestant ministries there. I conducted them. So I had to, my materials, and someone said, "Why don't you publish a book? Why don't you put this together?" So when I put that together, I put it under three different publications, and I used the acronym Dakumba, as my company name, where I've gone throughout the country, and even with the Dorsey Convention, having been the dean for 30, assistant and the dean for 31 years, I used a lot of these publications and taught that class on the Levitical model everywhere we went throughout the country. And it's a lot in there that musicians don't know about, because I too was challenged when I went to my second long-term minister of music position at Mount Pleasant Church and Ministers in Baltimore, Bishop Clifford Johnson. He
Mhm.
challenged me. He said, "You have enough secular education, all these schools, all this that you have, go to seminary." And he saw to it. He almost just took me by the hand, and because he was on the board of directors, and put me in Washington Bible College at that
National
time. That's
Bible
what it
College.
was. It's
Mhm.
Lancaster now. They've combined, but he took me there, and I spent a number of years there. He said, "Get the foundation," and then I had the opportunity to go to Aldersgate United Methodist Church in Alexandria, and
Mhm.
they helped me to get into Wesley. So I studied at Wesley. Then I went to Westminster College in which is New Jersey.
New Jersey, yes.
Yeah, and then I started, as I started putting these books together and writing, I looked at Trinity out in Indiana, spent a couple years there. And, to get the biblical principles that I was teaching and talking about, commanded them. So if I'm doing workshops, and that's what I featured my workshops on, teaching that model. I said, because anybody can come in and teach you, 10 or 12 songs, but do we know why we're singing what we're
Yes.
singing? What is the
Yeah.
message behind it? Who are the persons? What does the Bible say about this? And I was challenged by Bishop Johnson, and he allowed me to use that model there, because we were blessed to have 250 voices singing there.
I remember.
Yeah, a
I
music
remember.
ministry there. Yeah, you remember? Yeah, music ministry there, arts. And then he
Mhm.
said, "Train my people." So that's where I had to put the School of Music together for Mount Pleasant. We had that for 7 years, where
Mhm.
persons were taking the biblical approach to music, where they were taking instruments, taking voice, taking instrumental music and all that. So that was another opportunity. So there was administrative skills again, pull together curriculum. Now you're in charge, you're the dean per se. So, God has blessed me, and I counted nothing that I deserve, but God has just blessed me over the years to go places where I had the liberty and the freedom to be able to do these things. And I had the same privilege when I went to Virginia, Bethlehem Baptist, and I was there for
Mhm.
7 years. And then when I came to Pennsylvania Avenue, my interview was based on that. when I started talking about the scriptures and the
That's
Levites and Asaph and Heman, all of those persons, and sharing, because it has an impact on what we do and how we perceive what we do. It's just not throwing it together, but this is for the kingdom, and we have to realize that what we do is for the kingdom. We say the church, but now it's bigger than the church. It's for the kingdom, and we have to
and
make sure as we mentor people that they're getting the real essence of why we do what we do. You don't just get up and oh, didn't we make them shout today? No, that's not the message.
that's right. And so you don't just do you've always done ministry to me, which just means serving and understanding this is what this song means and this is why we sing this. And one of the pastors I grew up with said the biggest way not to tell the truth is through a song. But I always watched you when you always, when you were teaching and get the song in your spirit. Don't just sing words, but you were talking about your publications, and I have a list of them here. The Music Ministry, a compact survey of essentials for musicians in the Christian church, Rejoice, Resource Handbook. Are any of your publications still available now?
Yes, they can contact me and they're able to get them. I did have them on Facebook at one point, but now since I don't do as many workshops, I'm not as active, with the workshops and traveling in the past. But they're still available. You can still get them. Rejoice is the one that most people usually look at, because that is comprehensive, looking at the model and looking at those persons that were appointed, tabernacle and temple for ministry and worship. So we try to look at that and
Okay.
not do overkill, but say that, the model that I used here worked, and I modeled it, from here's the minister of music, here the three chief musicians, which to me meant those three chief musicians beneath me need to have the same skill that I have. If I'm not in place, nothing needs to stop. And I think we build ministry sometime on us and our whoever we are, and it's not a criticism, it's just simply saying we do that, and then if something should happen, God forbid, what happens, it kind of falls apart. So I always try to have a team and then pour into them, but every rehearsal I'm going to ask somebody, why do you sing it? What's this song mean to you? And then when I publish it in our bulletins, of course, even now, even though pandemic and we kind of shut down for a period of time, when I send in the program material for our preparation and worship repertoire listing, I get the scripture for it, because
Yes.
I tell persons, read the scripture. What is it? How does it tie into the song? Because if you can't make it take ownership of it, you can't say that other persons are going to get the message that should be.
But not even the same skill set, Dr. Moye. They have to have your same spirit as well, because you're very gentle, you're stern, but you're very gentle. So they need to kind of have that attribute, as even if they're faking it, because again, music is ministry and is pouring over. But so I wanted to ask you about how did you get tied into, because I saw all your, like I said, I don't normally read papers, but you had so much, and this is just such good inspiration and valuable information, awards. You have honors, awards, and endorsements. But how did you get involved in the National Convention of Gospel Choirs and Choruses? You've been in a long time. I remember going to Atlanta with you on that one. How did you
Right.
get involved in that?
Well, it was in 1987. I was asked. Well, the ensemble had brought Dorothy Grant, Professor Dr. Dorothy Grant. We had brought her in for one of our anniversaries in the early 80s at Greater New Hope, and she was our guest artist. You remember Elmer Jr. Johnson? He was a musician on my staff at Greater New Hope.
Yeah, I
And he
remember.
used to always say, well, I'm going to the Dorsey Convention. I'm going to Dorsey Convention. Why don't you come in and go? And I could never find, the time. I just didn't make the time.
Mhm.
And when the convention came in 72, they visited Greater New Hope. That was the first year they stayed in hotels. So they came with Sally Martin. I remember her coming, and Dr. Earl Preston. Many of them came, and they were at Greater New Hope for our morning worship. But in 87, they were bringing the convention to DC. So along with another musician of mine, I was asked to be the assistant music coordinator.
Okay.
And in coordinating that, the local chapter that's hosting that city, it's always a Monday night musical, always a Monday night musical that you host and let the convention see the musical entities of your city. So we were to host it that Monday night. It's always the first full week in August that we convene, and we were to host it in DC. So we coordinate, and of course, you begin your rehearsals early, where you are able to do, 8 or 10 songs or what have you, and then you bring in other guests during the week. Well, we had a 250 voice chapter from the at that time Washington Unity chapter. I was not a part of it, but I was indirectly I was. So Jesse Jackson that year, if I recall, yes, he was running for president. That was the year he put his hat in the ring for president. And that night, when he spoke to our convention, I brought in 250 singers on 8 buses from Baltimore, Mount Pleasant, as special guests. That kind of blew minds. Where is there any church, with 250? And this was usual for us. We take up the choir stand and many on
Trumpets,
the
yeah.
floor
Yeah.
every Sunday. I mean, that was normal because we combined everything, and that came from my study, the Levitical model. One choir. You don't need 9 choirs, and I used to always say Miss Mary singing on 3 of them. So it's just trying to make every rehearsal. But then I brought in the Moye ensemble, so they were scoping me out. And then they asked me to be a guest teacher for the Artelia Hutchins Training Institute that year. And I
Okay.
came in and I was asked to teach choir conducting. So I taught choir conducting that year as a guest. And here they all came. You cannot leave this convention. We need you here. And Brother Minor, late Bishop Moles, and Dr. Preston, and Dorothy Grant said, "We got you now. We see what you can do." So that was the beginning. That next year they put me on 88, and then they named me the assistant dean of the Training Institute. So
Yes.
I served as the dean, assistant dean up until 96, and then I became the dean. So I spent 31 years there. I was put right in as a national officer my first full year there, and
Wow.
I'm still there. I was on the board of directors as a board member at large, and then I moved from that to fifth vice president, and now I'm presently the third vice president. I retired as the dean after 31 years, 2019. But I was asked to redo the bylaws for the convention. I spent a number of years doing that to get them updated and look like a 501c3. So that's the history of my, 1987 that I travel and love it, love it. I found that it's like a family, and I found a place there that you could take your children. I've taken my grandchildren,
Mhm.
my family members. We go and enjoy because we're at a different city. This year we're in Orlando in August next year. Should things remain stable, we'll be in New Orleans. So we've not convened face to face for 2 years, and we're moving in that direction for this year. Our board meeting in April, and our national convention in August. But it's an awesome opportunity. I've tried to mirror and develop that school so that there was the training and teaching about the Levitical choir, and using materials that would support that along with my own textbook. So it's
Wow.
been a wonderful journey. We're in the stages of planning now, but like I said, we've been dormant for 2 years, but I've used some other methods and some others have. We've done virtual conventions, so we're trying to do in person
Well,
this August.
I thank you, Dr. Moye, for taking time out of your busy day. And I cannot say thank you to you without saying thank you to your lovely wife, Mrs. Catherine Moye, my friend. But this has been great. So I have my last question to you is, if you can look back at 10 years old, what would you tell yourself then as what you're doing now? If you could just take a scope back, a picture back and look.
When I was 10 years old and look at where I am now,
Yes.
I can truly say it's a blessing. Did I think that I would ever be in Fairfax County teaching? No. Did I ever think that I'd be on the staff of a major Ivy League university? No. Did I think that I would have the opportunity to serve in the positions that I have on in major organizations? Because it's not only convention that God has blessed me. I've served on John Leland Theological Seminaries Board, Salvation Army DMV Board. The opportunities that only uh, God could bless me with that opportunity. And he knew, he was putting the gift of administration, the gift of wisdom and knowledge, because all of that goes together. And looking from age 10, I probably would have said, oh, no, it's not possible. It's not possible. But I allowed God to lead my life. And when the opportunity is open, very prayerfully and using discernment before taking positions, I have used that, and I really learned that from Bishop Johnson. He had never had a minister of music in Baltimore. He had those 9 choirs, and he knew that he didn't, because he had studied the scriptures. He knew about the Levites that, one choir is what he wanted. And one choir that could do it, everything, all. We were blessed to sing some of our concerts in Baltimore, Mount Pleasant, with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. So we could sing whatever, But I probably, looking from a child's perspective, would not have said, oh, I can't do that. But now, spiritually, knowing that God, I was born with the gift of administration. God gave, and I believe that God gives you wisdom and discernment for those that you have to work with. You may not always call it out, but he gives it to you so that you can make a difference in that, those individuals, as well as the kingdom. We can't forget that this is not about us. It's bigger than us.
Absolutely.
So I'm just thankful that God has placed the gifts in, and I think, we have the responsibility to continue to grow in those giftings and those talents and those abilities. A lot of people say music is a gift. I differ sometimes along with my bishop, because I said I can teach you how to play an instrument,
It's a
but
ministry. Yeah.
a spiritual gift, those enablements come from God, and
Yes.
I can't put those in you. I can't part, God, when he births us, we come with those. We may not always realize it, but those that he feels that we could manage and handle when we become believers. I didn't always use them until I became a believer, and then was working toward the Christian journey that I knew that I was the path that I was on. So I don't know if I would even have made that parallel that this is where I would be now, to say that I've had 61 years of music ministry here in DC. I would not have said that, because my plan was to go to A&T.
North Carolina.
North Carolina, A&T, because that was a department there. And my aunt, my family said, no, you're not going there with your friends and your buddies. You're going to Howard. And that's where I ended up. And that's where the opportunity started really opening for me, because someone helped me, discern that how it would be a better choice for me. And it was.
Wow. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say once again, I was honored to have Dr. Ulysses G. Moye II, and I am streaming his information across the screen, his email, his phone, and then I didn't get to talk about the DC Cultural Arts, but again, he has publications that you can contact him. He's on Facebook, and there's so much that can be imparted. And I can sit here literally listen to you at least a couple more hours, just because God has had His hands on you and your family. You talked about, but Dr. Moye, I just want to thank you for coming on, being my first guest on Praise from the Closet. And anytime that you feel led to come on this platform, you are more than welcome, because our whole focus is to spread the love of Jesus, the word of God, in any form or fashion, because we're going to use all nationalities. And not only are we doing video, but we actually have a radio station. If you go on our website, WGMLB.com, we just finished canon and class in Jarrell Allen. We're going to make it. We play gospel, country, we play hillbilly, we play anything that is inspirational. So thank you, and for taking the time out today to visit us on Praise from the Closet with DJ Straight. And all the influence that you have given unto me, I try to instill that in other people. So thank you, Dr. Moye. And I want to tell everybody else, join us tomorrow at 4:30, where we'll have another guest on, all the way from Washington State, from Lunenburg County to Washington State. And so, are there any parting words you would like to say? I don't want to tire you out before we go off.
No, Lynn, I'd like to just thank you for the opportunity, because, when you asked me, I said, me for Black History, but you don't realize the blessings that others may realize that, you are beholding of until the opportunity is given. But I don't even think about these things. I don't think one needs to push themselves out there. God is the promoter. You do what he says do, and then he'll do the promoting. But I'm just so grateful for your giving me this opportunity, and thankful, and I'm trusting that there's been something said that your listeners will, be intrigued by, that we will have like minds about, so that they become curious to say, well, there is another point that I had not heard, or something else.
Absolutely.
Because many of our musicians don't know anything about the Levitical choir, or they just know surface information. But I had to end up going to 4 different seminaries and schools, theology, in order to get that under my belt, so that it would be something that I could just talk off, just like I know my name and other subjects. Absolutely. I would know that too. So thank you for this. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to God for choosing me first to do this ministry, and I'm grateful for you for asking me to share it, because you could have picked anyone else other than me. So I'm very honored, and this won't be my last time. I'll be tuning in and listening. You came to my rescue when we were doing the parking lot concerts. We were shut down in church, but we were on the parking lot, and I said, Lynn, got to come back and play those drums for me. And you were right there, and this is how this came about. So,
absolutely.
We are a team. We're ministry mates all the way through, and we have to understand that.
Yes, but let me just say, you're not putting yourself out. When I ask you to talk about yourself, it's just so much that you can impart, not just in music and administration, but just being a servant, a Christian, and being a man, a family man, a man's man, and you're gentle. So yes, I am your admirer all the way. So
and I must share on the 16th, my wife and I, Catherine, who's been by my side, she's been the businessman. She's been there every step of the way. She took charge of the house, but I'm running here and doing 60 and 70 hours. Because you can imagine being an administrator and then doing music. I'm doing 60, 70 hours a week. She took care of those things at home. But we will be celebrating 59 years of marriage on the 16th of this month.
2 days after Valentine's Day.
Yes. So
wow, that is great.
God blessed us. Yes, he's blessed us. And we're in ministry together.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Moye.
I would say we're in ministry together. She knows as much about it. I say, you take care of the business part of it. And that's what she does. She does a great job in managing that, and keeping my dates, and keeping the conflicts down and all that. So we know the things that we are responsible for doing in the community. But we want to be a blessing to the community, and what you're doing is a blessing to the community. Understand that we must reach out sometime, like you said, not go everywhere else, but we have it right, in our backyards, but sometimes it's not always tapped into. So thank you for this opportunity, and I trust that listeners have been blessed by it.
All right. Well, this is DJ Straight signing off. And if you missed this or you want to share it, tell them to go on YouTube, channel DJ Straight, and you will be able to see it. And we, until the next time, until tomorrow, this is DJ Straight signing off with Praise from the Closet. And hold on. I'm sorry, you all. My sometimes